Hey, this is Lou Mangello from WDW Radio, and you're listening to the Fiveish Fangirls podcast. Let's do this.
The Tangent Squeak continue all the way to episode 491 of the Fiveish Fangirls podcast. No, I feel this. Oh, that clock. Oh, that killjoy. I hear you. Come on, get up, you say. Time to start another day. Even he orders me around. Well, there's one thing. They can't order me to stop dreaming. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Fiveish Fangirls podcast. So, just let's start off like we were with a virtual table and see who's joined us this week. This is Brittany in Bengal.
This is Holly from Wisconsin.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. We are back. Lovely little long weekend away. Chauncey and I went to Frankenmuth, Michigan, which neither of us had actually ever been to. So, that was quite fun. We were definitely there in the off season. It's a little cold. It snowed while we were there, so it's a little chilly. We'll have to go back when it's maybe not so cold and more stuff is open. Because there were some things that were closed because it was just too cold, and the places that were open had shortened hours because of the cold. Even with the time change, it's staying later, longer. I get it there. I haven't had any coffee today. I'm trying to pace myself. I had way too much yesterday. There's not enough business for them to justify staying open past like 6 for most things. So, but we did hit some of the touristy stuff. We did go to Bronner's, which are those if maybe aren't familiar, go look it up. It is the largest Christmas store, essentially. Like, if you need you're looking for a specific like themed ornament for your tree, if they don't have it, you probably don't need it. Or maybe they're just temporarily sold out. So, but that was really wild. Although when we got there and parked and then got out of the car, and I immediately realized, oh wait, this is a Christmas themed shop, which means they're going to be playing Christmas music out in the parking lot and inside. I was like, oh, I didn't think about the music. So I did my best to ignore it. Instead, kept my focus on finding ornaments. So we did pick up some that are going to be gifts for people later. And then some just because we have a couple of smaller trees that we kind of keep up all year round that are kind of just like, because we tend to pick up ornaments and or fridge magnets. Oftentimes, sometimes those fridge magnets also double as, either like, chip clips or bottle openers.
Yep.
Which is our one from the House on the Rock. It also doubles as a bottle opener. Or ornaments when we go on vacation to certain places. And then sometimes we just have some fun, geeky themed ones that are just, they don't necessarily scream Christmas to you. They're just stuff we like. Like I have some Beatles ones and that sort of thing. So we got some just to add to our collection. And then we ate way too much. The food in Frankenmuth is very good. They have some very good restaurants. Oh, if anybody, I won't tangent. I won't tangent off too much, but we do have quite a bit to talk about because we were off for a week. So in this case, I won't tangent off too much. But if anyone wants to hear all about the one dinner that we had that included pasta pizza let us know and send us some feedback, and I'll tell you all about it. And I'll include visual aids. So, anyways, surprisingly enough, not a whole lot in the way of news. Other than we're getting trailers. Stuff is getting ready to come out, or they're gonna start promoting things that are due to come out later this year, that sort of thing. So of course, the House of Mouse always. I think they realized that maybe Snow White wasn't going to do so well, so like, here, let's throw some new trailers out there and just start distracting people with some other things. So we got our first look at Elio, which is going to be one of the latest Pixar offerings, and honestly, just based on the one trailer so far, I think it looks really cute. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it looks like it's going to be quite fun. I think maybe it's going to have a little bit of kind of a Wizard of Oz type feel. Like, he's dreaming of someplace, better where he fits in. Dorothy wants to go over the rainbow. Elio wants to be abducted by aliens. They both get their wish, but in return, they'll probably figure out that maybe home isn't necessarily a bad place. So, that's my guess. But it looks really cute. So, hopefully, I'm correct in that. We also have our first proper look at the live-action Lilo and Stitch. It looks fine. Like, as far as Stitch, the CGI Stitch with everything else, it looks fine. I mean, it kind of looks like a shot-for-shot remake for the most part of the cartoon. Like, there are gags in there that I know are also in the cartoon. Like, so, I mean, it looks fine. Like, do we need it? Probably not. But we're gonna get it anyway, so, it is what it is. But, the girl playing Lilo, she looks adorable, I will say. She looks like that, she is taken on the role and is giving it her own take on it while still staying true to the character. The character just comes on, is very sassy, very Lilo. So I will give them that. It looks like, as far as the casting for Lilo, spot on. So and then this, I'm very excited. Is it September yet? Because we're not turning it up to 11. We're turning it up to infinity. So we're finally getting that sequel to Spinal Tap.
Yep.
All these years later, with a little teaser for Spinal Tap 2, the end continues. The guys of Spinal Tap will be reuniting. There will be shenanigans. Not just the guys in Spinal Tap will be returning, but also a certain some other characters played by some familiar faces shall be returning, including a certain Fran Drescher, among others. So, I mean, what? Well, it wasn't Monty Python, because it's outside of Monty Python, but it's Eric Idle. What the Ruddles did for the Beatles, is what Spinal Tap did for, like, the Who.
Yes.
Oh.
Especially when it comes to the drummers. Yeah. And boys.
Yeah. Oh. If yeah. It's distinctly British humor.
Oh,
yeah. There is no questioning that. But the OG Spinal Tap movie is a classic, and it's been on the list to talk about for a while, but then when we got word that they were doing a sequel, it's like, oh, we're gonna put a pause on that. And then they did the sequel, and then we were just waiting to find out when we were getting the sequel. So now that we know, come later in the year, yes, we will be turning things up to at least 11. So that's exciting. Oh, and then we got our newest season of Doctor Who quickly approaching.
Yes, less than a month away.
Yeah, next month. Not quite Easter Saturday, but that's okay. And we got a new trailer for it, which at first I was like, do I really need to watch it? And then I was like, sure, why not? And I did. And I'm glad I did, because at least now I have a warning that at least in one of these episodes, I don't know which one, but one of these episodes is going to have Big Ass Spider in it.
Again.
Again!
I had to warn her about Supernatural. We had a few, well, there's a classic Doctor Who episode with the spider, and then we had the one that we shall not name during Jodie Whittaker's run. Come on, be nice to Rachie. I'm right there with you, though.
Yeah, because I was like, oh yeah, because I'm looking at, like the costumes and stuff. I love the fact that, they're letting Shooty have a lot of fun with his version of the Doctor and really playing with the wardrobe and the hair.
Yep. And kudos to the use of Phil Collins' Take Me Home. I was like, sweet, I like this.
Yeah. It started out, I'm like, this kind of sounds like Phil Collins, because it was just the drum beat, and then the guy was like, oh yes.
Are they going there? Yes, they are.
They were there.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we did get all the episode titles.
That was last week, I think.
Yeah, which is great. It tells us who each one is. The writer and the director for each episode. Written, Russell T Davies writing most of them. Directors are kind of all over the place. But other than the Interstellar Song Contest, which we've already tangented about that.
Yeah.
And the possible continuity issues with Big Finish. But yeah, based on the other titles, I can't tell you which one of these is going to have the big ass spider in it. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing it's not the Interstellar Song Contest. I could be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, none of these scream big ass spider in this episode. So
that would be a heck of a plot twist for the
yeah, I mean that did not happen in the Big Finish audio, so I would give him that. But I have no idea. I have no idea which one of these is going to be the one with the big ass spider. I'm not even entirely sure which one is going to be the one with where they turn into cartoons with Alan Cumming. So
that's going to be interesting to see how long they go with the animation.
This is what all the animating of the Lost Stories, this is what it's all been leading up to.
Right.
Is that for them to do an actual episode, a new episode of Doctor Who, and it's animated? So yeah, you can go check out the trailer. Again, big ass spider warning. Although thankfully it looks like the big ass spider does get blown up. But still, big ass spider. And you can also go read the episode titles as well. So there is that. And then of course we do have another week of voting for the book club. So
yes, we do.
Because last day of March is next Monday. So somehow we ended up in a month with 5 Mondays, which I think explains a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Oh, so there is that. Moving on to feedback. Here's some feedback from Shilane. She says, Houston, we have a problem. She said, here's some news you missed. Kathleen Kennedy is set to retire as Lucasfilm's chairman, and I know there's been some celebrating on the interwebs about that. I know some people are like, good good riddance. I'm more of the wait and see.
Yep.
Just because, yes, do I like Star Wars? Yes. Am I uber fan? Not necessarily, but I haven't been necessarily disappointed with what they've been doing either. But I'm not as emotionally invested as
some things been better than others. Yes.
Yep. So, in general, I think it's been positive. But again, that's me. I'm not as emotionally invested in Star Wars as I am the MCU.
Right. Yeah, things get shooken up there. Look out.
Yes. Then we're going to have words.
We're going to have issues. Yeah. We ride at dawn, basically.
Yeah. Pretty much. It's just now the big question, who will take over? Will it be Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau? I mean, there might be other people on that list as well. I can't see Jon Favreau taking over just because he's got himself busy with
in
5
the
bazillion. Yeah. I mean, he's got 5 bazillion things that he's involved in, and I don't think that's something he necessarily wants to put on his plate. Dave Filoni, on the other hand, maybe.
Or maybe to kind of from a certain animated movie, both would be good.
Yeah.
Have them dual team up when one's not busy. They could work together.
Yeah. Or it could be someone just,
brand new.
Maybe somebody nobody's thought of. So.
Yep.
Maybe they want to have someone fresh to take over Star Wars. I don't know.
Yeah.
We will have to wait and see. Speaking of Disney, they've decided to stop making TV series based on their animated movies from Disney Plus. Yes, they have shelved the Tiana series. Oh, that sucks. It was probably a good move to turn the Moana series into a theatrical sequel instead of a Disney Plus series. Probably. So that kind of sucks for Tiana, though, especially considering she's now the theme for Splash Mountain.
Right.
So, yeah. Or the attraction formerly known as Splash Mountain, I should say. I guess we'll have to wait and see if the Tiana, if maybe they decide to do and make that a feature film instead. I don't know. Again, I'm not in charge. So I forgot to ask about Phase 5. Which Phase 5 films were box office hits and which ones were just fun popcorn flicks? I think we gotta shelve that discussion because technically we're not done with Phase 5 yet.
Right.
So we'll have to circle back around to that after Phase 5 is done. Because we're still kind of in the thick of it. She asks, is Apollo 13 the first Tom Hanks movie you've discussed outside of pulling his name from the celebrity hat?
I believe we talked
Technically, no, because when we talked about Mr. Rogers,
right,
we did talk about his portrayal of Fred Rogers.
And did we also talk about the Dungeons and Mazes or something?
Yes, we did talk about Mazes and Monsters.
Mazes and Monsters, yep.
Yep. And then when we have talked about Walt, we talked about his portrayal of Walt Disney. So, no, this is not the first movie we have discussed. So, it probably won't be the last. So, I know you talked about Forrest Gump and A League of Their Own on Gold Standard. Yep. And if I remember correctly, did you discuss Saving Private Ryan on Patreon Gold Standard? No, we have not. And I don't really want to because I don't want to have to watch that again.
Once is enough.
Once is enough. These really accurate portrayals of war are a bit hard to watch.
Yep.
More than once. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's really good. It's Spielberg. Of course it's going to be good.
Yes.
That's the problem is sometimes you're too good. If that's humanly possible. So, yeah, I would prefer not to have to discuss Saving Private Ryan again, but maybe it'll come up. I don't know. Aside from Tom Hanks, Apollo 13 is also the first film where you've covered both Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon. Yeah, I mean, Bill Paxton was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I know you talked about Titanic on Gold Standard because Bill Paxton was in it. Yes. Have you ever covered a Kevin Bacon movie on Gold Standard? No. As if so, I'm guessing it would be Footloose. No, we have not. Off the top of my head, no. I don't think we've discussed any Kevin Bacon. At least not anything where Kevin Bacon's had a starring-ish role. So I'm sure if we played 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, we could find connections to pretty much everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And some in only one step.
Yes. See, the quote, Houston, we have a problem, is one of the top 50 movie quotes of all time. I read the number one movie quote is, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, from Gone with the Wind. Yes. And what's funny, I will take a little side tangent here, my vacation. One of the things we did do is we went to the Michigan Military and Space Museum. So it's a museum specifically to honor those that have served in the military and or in the space program that have connections to Michigan, whether they were Michigan born, Michigan raised, went to college in Michigan. They have some sort of direct connection to Michigan, and it starts all the way back with like the Civil War up to current, and the start of the space program to current day. But in the gift shop, they did have a NASA t-shirt for sale that said, Houston, we have a problem, which I think is funny considering that's not what he actually said.
Right.
So they're quoting the movie instead of the actual occurrence of what happened. So I even pointed out to Chauncey. I'm like, well, technically, I mean, that's not correct because that's not what he actually said. That's what Tom Hanks says in the movie, but that's not what actually was spoken to NASA. But I digress. Then she asked, what are your favorite movie quotes? Mine is the perfect date quote from Miss Congeniality with Sandra Bullock. Oh my god. Asking my favorite movie quote is like asking like something where I couldn't pick just one.
Same,
what's my favorite?
Honestly.
What's my favorite ride at Disney? Like which park? Yeah, you're gonna narrow it down here. I mean, I have some that I say a lot that aren't necessarily my favorite. They just are easily used in everyday conversation. So, but yeah, necessarily a personal favorite. I mean, man, that's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I could pick. I don't sure if I could pick just one. Oh, I like different lines for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I really like Aragorn's speech in front of the in front of the gates of Mordor in Return of the King. Of course, I used it. You shall not pass a lot.
Yep.
In various contexts that have nothing to do with the giant Balrog. A quote Samuel Jackson in Jurassic Park, hold on to your butts. That gets used a lot.
or his as Nick Fury, stupid decision.
I recognize the council's made a decision, but given it's a stupid ass decision, I'm elected to ignore it. Yes. The MCU does get quoted a lot.
Yeah.
There's a really good lines in there. If somebody's frustrating me, you're killing me, Smalls. Sandlot.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. It just depends. It really just depends. But I don't know if I could necessarily pick one particular favorite. I mean, speaking of Tom Hanks, I use this quote geared towards Chauncey sometimes. You're a sad, strange little man. So, I am Buzz Lightyear, and he is Woody. You're a sad, strange little man. So, yep. It just depends. I mean, what about you guys? Could you go, like, or at the very least, are there some you use on a regular basis?
You're killing me, Smalls. You shall not pass. Here goes nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's times when, like, I love all my coworkers, but there are times I'm like Scar, and I'm surrounded by idiots.
Yes.
That is appropriate too. That is appropriate. Oh. What was it that I forget exactly what it is? What quote I used?
And then the one from The Princess Bride, it's not what you think.
That does not mean what you think it means.
Yes.
Yeah. You keep using that word. I think it means. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Some of the best quotes are the ones that you can actually use in everyday life, I think. No, I forget what it was. I quoted something at work, and this was like early on, and I quoted Bueller.
Yeah,
Bueller. I made the Ferris Bueller quote.
Mm-hmm. Anybody Bueller?
Dead stares.
No
recognition.
Oh, jeez.
Nothing on these kids' faces. Had no idea what I was talking about, what I was referencing. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so old. Oh my. So yeah, if any of our listeners want to, let us know what their favorite movie quotes are, feel free to give us a holler and let us know. So, or if there's ones that you use on a regular basis. So I know that the Miss Congeniality, That Perfect Date, is coming up, I believe. I think it's sometime in April.
Yep.
So meanwhile, some people in my feeds are trying to pull out the Justin Timberlake meme. Like, you're a month early.
Yeah.
You need to slow your roll.
Yep. We still got another 6 weeks.
Yep. Let's get past Easter first. Then we can talk. Since Apollo 13 was released in 1995, that means it's turning 30 this year. Yes. Be patient for when you get to Toy Story and Clueless. That's all I have to say about Apollo 13. I've never watched it all the way through, but I need to. Yes, you should. For my 30th birthday, I'm planning to watch movies that are also celebrating their 30th anniversary. I did the same for my 25th birthday. The challenge, watching one movie a day, though not necessarily on my actual birthday. Fair enough. Make things a little easy for yourself. Not sure yet what my birthday plans will be, but stay tuned. I'll know more by July. The only problem, Fantastic Four First Step is coming out on my birthday, so I'll have to figure that out. Hey, I mean, going to see a Marvel movie, even if it's new and not turning 30 years old. We'll give you that one. I would give you that one. You're allowed one mulligan.
Right?
One exception. Well, you do have till July, Shalane, so you're a smart girl. I believe in you. And that is the end of Shalane's feedback. Thank you very much, Shalane. Moving on to this week's main topic. Speaking of movies that are having anniversaries, this is a big one. The Disney animated feature film of the fairy tale known as Cinderella just had its 75th anniversary last month. Which was like, I know it, like, logically Cinderella is, classic, it's a Disney animated classic, but for some reason just 75 years just does not compute.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure why. Just like I cannot comprehend that 75 years. So that being said, the story of Cinderella, as many of our Disney princesses, go way further back in time than when Disney was like, hey, this would make a good cartoon. let's cartoonify it. And we've talked about Mulan, we have talked about Snow White, and Cinderella is no exception. Now, has she always been called Cinderella? No. That is, I say, newer. We're also talking hundreds of years ago. So when I say new, very big air quotes. But the idea of a fair, a young fair maiden in less than ideal living circumstances, yet in a good number of these stories is still kind and loving, even if her family or her caretakers or whoever it is that she's living with treat her like crap. And eventually, through circumstances, she ends up meeting a prince, someone of a higher station, who whisks her off to live happily ever after, essentially. Obviously, the phrase "a Cinderella story" has been pulled into the cultural zeitgeist. Oftentimes, it's used a lot in sports. It's very appropriate. We're in the middle of March Madness right now.
Yep.
Because you will hear that a lot in sports, where the underdog team seemingly comes out of nowhere and wins it all, or at the very least, beats the big rival. That's happened a number of times in the NCAA tournament. It's happened in a lot of number of sports. You could say that what was it in the 80s when the hockey team beat the Russians?
Oh, do you believe in miracles?
Yeah, do you believe in miracles? See, you could call that a bit of a Cinderella story.
Yep.
Again, the underdogs beating the big guys, the seemingly unbeatable foe. You hear it sometimes also referred to just people that started out from maybe humble beginnings, and have found fame, fortune, whatever, and are now living a life of seemingly unbelievable circumstances compared to where they were early on in life. So the idea of a Cinderella is very much, it's gone beyond just the princess in this day and age. And we'll get to that. But first we need to talk about the idea of this type of story and its origins. So the oldest known oral version, because you're talking about a time frame before they started writing stuff down, so stories were passed on via speaking around the campfire or whatever. And the oldest oral known version of what we would consider Cinderella actually goes back to ancient Greece, and it's the story of Rhodopis. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know Greek. She was a Greek courtesan living in the colony that I'm not going to try to pronounce. It's in Egypt. But her name means rosy cheeks. Now it was first recorded by a Greek geographer in his notes, his notebook. And he says that they, meaning the Egyptians, tell the fabulous story that when she was bathing, an eagle snatched one of her sandals from her maid and carried it to Memphis, not Tennessee. We're talking about Egypt. Different king in Memphis. And while the king, not Elvis, was administering justice in the open air, the eagle, when it arrived above his head, flung the sandal into his lap. And the king, stirred both by the beautiful shape of the sandal and by the strangeness of the occurrence, sent men in all directions into the country in quest of the woman who wore the sandal. When she was found in the city, that I'm not going to try to pronounce, she was brought up to Memphis, again, not in Tennessee, and became the wife of the king, again, not Elvis. So, beautiful woman loses a shoe. Lost footwear, very common occurrence in most of these retellings, but not all of them, as we shall see. The same story was later reported by a Roman in circa 175 to 235, so we're talking a long time ago. And that was written entirely in Greek. It's very similar to the story I just recounted, other than the pharaoh / king gets a name. So yeah, that the idea of shoe testing goes back quite a bit. Greece, Egypt, Malta. It's just a number of versions within Europe and kind of that other part of the world. And then you get outside of Europe and like your kind of northeastern African regions. You got a Chinese version from around 860. And then there's also a version very similar to that from Vietnam. There's also a Korean version, which is actually very similar to Disney's version, but way more violent, which is actually more closer to the Brothers Grimm version, which we'll get to that. And actually the plot continues past our heroine's marriage to the prince. So, and then there's even some versions or similar stories in 1001 Nights. So, moving forward to the 17th century, you have some more European versions, and a version written. These were actually like written down properly, and there's a version from 1634 by Basile. There is a version from 1697 by Perrault, and that is actually the version that ends up getting referenced when talking about some of the versions that we our modern day are familiar with. And Perrault is actually the one to introduce the idea of the glass slipper. And then, of course, you have the version by the Brothers Grimm, which they originally wrote down in 1812, and then immediately did an updated version in 1819, which was even more gruesome. So, yeah, because the Brothers Grimm, as we have discussed when talking about, fairy tales, and specifically their versions are quite violent.
Yes.
Yeah, even
not
for the time
for sweet dreams.
Yeah, this is like, this is the non-sanitized version. Disney had to take some of these and heavily sanitize them to make them child friendly. Because the Brothers Grimm, these weren't fairy tales just so like something to tell your kid to get them to go to sleep at night. They were also doubled as morality tales, which a lot of these folk tales and fairy tales were meant for. They weren't just entertainment. They were supposed to have a moral to the story, because it was a lot easier to tell a captivating story and get your point across, like don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie, that sort of thing, instead of just flat out telling somebody not to do that. Because, when you tell somebody not to do something, what are they going to do? They're going to do the opposite. That's just human nature. So, and especially when it comes to children. So you tell them a story, and they're gonna be like, okay, because then they're gonna be like, oh, I don't want to be like, that character in that story that Grandpa told me the other night. So, yeah, the Brothers Grimm version is literally very grim. It is, it very much, still has the same major plot points. Cinderella's mother dies, but before she dies, she tells her daughter to remain good and kind, and then she will always be watched over. The daughter, after her mother is buried, visits the grave every day. A year goes by, her father remarries. This woman has 2 daughters from a previous marriage herself. Those daughters are, in this case, very beautiful, but their hearts, not so much. Very ugly on the inside. And they banish her to the kitchen and make her essentially a slave. But despite everything, she remains good and kind, continues to visit her mother's grave. At one point, the father has to travel, so he asks his daughters, what can I bring you back as a present? One of the stepdaughters asks for a beautiful dress. The other asks for jewelry. Cinderella, that's not what she's necessarily called in here, but that's what we're gonna call her for sake of clarity, just asks for the first twig that knocks his hat off while he's traveling. Like, that's something that happens often enough. It's like, when your hat inevitably gets knocked off, Daddy, I want the tree branch that does it. Okay. So that's what he does. So he brings her back a twig from a hazel tree. She plants the twig over her mother's grave and waters it with her tears, and it ends up growing up into a beautiful hazel tree. She prays under the tree, which is on top of her mother's grave, and there's a white bird that always comes to visit, and she tells her wishes, and the bird ends up giving her whatever it is she wished for. So, of course, the king decides to throw a big festival, have all the beautiful girls come, so the prince can pick one to be his new missus, and the stepsisters go. Cinderella is not allowed to. So she wants to, so she goes to, when her stepmother and stepsisters, everybody goes to the big party, she goes to the tree, cries, asks for a beautiful dress of silver and gold, and so she wears that, goes, dances with the prince, it's at midnight, she has to come home at sunset, because it's like an all-day festival type thing. So she has to be home by sunset. So she gets home, he follows her, or he takes her home, and then at the last minute she gives him the slip. And by the time her father comes home, she's back to wearing her dirty rags, so he doesn't suspect anything. Day 2 of the festival, this time she asks for even nicer clothing. Again, she goes, she dances with the prince. The prince escorts her home. Again, she gives him the slip. She's back in the kitchen when her father gets home. So, 3rd day, she gets the most, the tree and the magic birds outdo themselves for the 3rd day, giving her the best dress and these golden slippers. And she goes back, and this time the prince is like, he's thinking ahead. He's like, I'm not gonna let her give me the slip, this time. So he paints the stairs with essentially like the same kind of glue tar thing that you would use to do a roof. Which, I mean, they wouldn't have shingles at the time, but you do like a thatch roof, and the sticky substance you would use to make like your hay or whatever for your roof stay. He paints the stairs with that, so when she takes off, one of her shoes gets stuck. of course the prince finds it, and he's all like, I must find the girl whose foot fits this perfectly, and I will marry her. So eventually they show up at her house. Of course, the stepmother's like, no, my girl's first, so the older stepsister first. They know that her foot's not going to fit, not knowing that Cinderella's actually the one, but they know that it's like, there's no way her foot's gonna fit. So she cuts off her toes to fit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, look, it fits! And they're like, great, let's go get married, baby. And so they take off, and as they pass, as they're riding in their coach or whatever back to the palace, these magic doves appear, and they're like, dude, you might want to check out the blood. And the prince is all like, ugh, that's gross. Obviously, you cheated. So he comes back. And this time, it's the other stepsister's turn, and like, I'll just cut off part of my heel and make it fit. Because both of them are like, once I'm queen, I don't have to walk anywhere, so what if I'm disfigured? So, and they're like, look, it fits! So again, he's like, great, let's go be married, baby! And then once again, these birds are like, dude, check out the red stains! And he's all like, ugh, gross! Oh, go, never mind, turn around, go back. And this time they're like, are there any other ladies in the house? And they're like, well, there's our little maiden that she sleeps in the kitchen, she's filthy, she's yucky, you don't want her. She appears, he puts the shoe on her, fits her like a glove. After both of her stepsisters have been bleeding into the shoe, I don't know if I'd want to put it on.
Right? Exactly.
Even if it meant I got to marry a prince and get far away from this wretched house and live happily ever after, then unless the shoes magically clean themselves or something. But I just imagine the shoe would just be gross.
Yeah, there's no D&D prestidigitation. Let's clean that thing and sanitize it.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, what do I know?
Right.
But
they
either
didn't
way,
think about that too much back in the day.
Yeah. But yeah, he's like, you're the one, and she's getting an opportunity to wash her face and hands, and it's like, yes, I recognize you now. You needed to wash your hands and your face and put on this shoe, and now I recognize you. So then they take off. No need for any warnings from any magic birds. In fact, the magic birds are like, dude, third try's the charm. You got it right this time. Go have fun. And, the birds end up going off as, little protectors or whatever to Cinderella, and that they live happily ever after. But in 1819, the Brothers Grimm decided that their 1812 version wasn't gruesome enough, so in their new edition, as Cinderella is it's on her wedding day, and she's decided, as a token of good faith, she's made her stepsisters her bridesmaids. Of course, the stepsisters are still jealous, and as punishment, the doves pluck out one of their eyeballs apiece, and but even after all this, they don't give up trying to, be wretched. They still have it, they're still just awful. But the wedding ceremony still happens. Cinderella and the prince get married. They take off to go to their, wedding reception and then their honeymoon or whatever. And because the stepsisters still haven't learned the lesson, the doves come back and pluck out their other eyeball, leaving them both blind. So, because, cutting out the toes and the heel was enough.
Right.
Even though they've been left with permanent limp and disfigurement in their feet.
Yep.
So yeah, I just for me it was the them cutting off the toes and the heel was just all like that is always just stuck with me from the first time I ever read that. I'm like,
no, thank you. Give me the Disney version. Give me the Disney version.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll deal with Lucifer.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, that's the Brothers Grimm version. Of course, there've been other written versions. I mean, there are so many variations and alternative versions that we just can't get into all of them. From all over the world. Some involve magic, some have the fairy godmother, sometimes it's magic birds, sometimes it's whatever. And sometimes it's fish. It just kind of depends on which version you're looking at.
And then we have the Once Upon a Time little twist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is the stepmother does not appear in all of them. Sometimes it's older sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the father is alive, sometimes he's not. So it's there's some gender swap versions. So yeah, there's a lot of different variations out there. So that's a rabbit hole you could easily go down. And probably spend quite a bit of time. Mm-hmm. And then of course, those different versions have influenced other works. There's opera versions, there's ballet, there's theater, like regular theater, not musicals, and then of course there are musicals. Of course, Rodgers and Hammerstein's is probably the most famous as far as the musicals are concerned. Which I had not realized this. I've known about the Rodgers and Hammerstein version, obviously. I did not realize that it was written specifically for television. Like, I had always thought of Rodgers and Hammerstein doing their thing and eventually somebody would adapt it for film or TV, like they have with a number of them, Oklahoma and stuff like that. But no, this one was specifically written for television and then put on the stage. So of course, music by Richard Rodgers, book and lyrics by Oscar Hammerstein II. This is based on the one by Charles Perrault. And this is their only musical written for television. It broadcast on live in color on CBS on March 31st, 1957, with Julie Andrews in the titular role. And at the time was viewed by more than 100 million people, which in 1950s, that's not bad.
Right?
So yeah, you had Julie Andrews as Cinderella, and a number of, I think, people who were notable at the time. In some of the other roles. Some of these people, you might know them from other things. Like the prince was played by John Cipher, who later was on Hill Street Blues.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, some Tony and Emmy Award winners. The stepsisters, one of them was played by Alice Ghostley, who was she was Bernice on Designing Women. I think that's what I know her best from. So although she was also the Esmeralda on Bewitched. I thought that was kind of funny. And then that has it's been broadcast on television 2 other times. So 1957 was the premiere. That was before color videotape was available, so there was only one performance. There were no understudies or anything, so if any of the cast couldn't do it, that was it. Like, if Julie couldn't do it, it wouldn't happen. And then in 1965, there was another television version with Richard Rodgers as the executive producer. Hammerstein had died in 1960. And the script was a little closer to the traditional tale, although they did keep all of the songs. And the cast in this had Ginger Rogers as the queen and Walter Pidgeon as the king. Let's see. Pat Carroll was one of the stepsisters who would later voice Ursula in The Little Mermaid. And Stuart Damon was the prince, which if you're a daytime soap opera fan, he played Dr. Alan Quartermain in General Hospital for 30 years. So, and then Leslie Ann Warren, at the age of 18, played the titular role of Cinderella, which, you may or may not recognize her name. So, depending on your age, I mean, those of us of a certain age know her best as Miss Scarlet in Clue. So, and then of course there's the 1997 version, with, Whitney Houston and Brandy.
Mm-hmm.
Which is still beloved by day. In fact, they brought back Brandy to play Cinderella again. Along with a number of the rest of the cast. Definitely, again, you're showing your age on whether you recognize some of these people, because 1997, strangely enough, was a little bit ago. But yeah, you have Brandy as Cinderella, you have Whitney Houston as the fairy godmother. This was a very diverse cast, very much in the vein of what Hamilton would be doing, 20 plus years later, where the race of the people doesn't matter. It's just the best people for the part. But because you have Bernadette Peters playing the stepmother. You have Paolo Montalban playing the prince. You have Whoopi Goldberg as the queen, Victor Garber as the king, Jason Alexander as the herald, and the stepsisters, Veen Cox and Natalie DeSalle. And honestly, I think their version of the Stepsisters Lament is my favorite. It is so funny. So, and of course, it's been on stage, both on and off Broadway for ages. So, some of the songs are very much iconic. In My Own Little Corner. Impossible. The Stepsisters Lament is hilarious when it's done correctly. So yeah, there's that version. Funnily enough, actually Disney did a quote-unquote version of it when they were still doing the Disney Laugh-O-Grams in 1922. It was a 7.5 minute long animated version. So they'd taken a crack at it once, but it would take almost another 30 years for them to take a crack at it again. So that leads us to the 1950 version, which some people may not realize that by the time They were good getting around to this, that the studio wasn't doing too hot. Obviously, Snow White, their OG Disney princess, had done a lot for legitimizing the idea of a feature-length cartoon, proving that people would sit through that and pay money to see something like that. And subsequent films after Snow White, some did better than others. Although World War II didn't help either, because some of your studio employees kind of had to go fight in the war. So the Walt Disney Productions kind of took a financial hit. And also some of the movies just didn't do too well. Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi, all initially did not do well. They would once they got re-released in theaters, and when we started doing Disney at-home video with everyone's favorite plastic skin slicing open clamshell cassette tape boxes. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Fabulous. Took up way more room wherever you held your cassette tapes, whether it was a bookshelf or whatever, because they were so much bigger than just the cardboard sleeves that you would put cassettes in. And that plastic, if you weren't careful, it was worse than a paper cut.
Oh, yeah. And they could cut deep.
Yes. So by 1947, the studio was not doing too well. It was over $4 million in debt and on the verge of bankruptcy. Something Walt had seen before, and actually they would see again. So Walt and his animators, his 9 old men, among others, were like, okay, we need to get back to basics. Time to do a feature film. And it just so happened that they knew of Charles Perrault and his fairy tales, and they decided to go with Cinderella. Thankfully, it worked. Released the day after Valentine's Day, 1950, and was immediately a critical acclaim and a box office success. In the biggest opening or biggest hit since Snow White in 1937. So it helped a lot to fix the bank accounts of the studios and everyone involved. It also received 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Score, Best Sound Recording, and Best Original Song for Bippy Boppy Boo. So the obviously comparatively to some of the other versions we've discussed, this version more sanitized, lot more family friendly. Although naming the cat after essentially another name for the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Little funny.
Yep.
I think they probably put that in there because they knew it would be funny for the parents and knew it would probably go over the kids' heads.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but Lucifer was actually modeled after Ward Kimball's cat. Ward Kimball had a calico that had 6 toes, so it was a Hemingway cat named Fiveish. Apparently, Walt came over to Kimball's house at one point, and Fiveish insisted trying to butter up to Mr. Disney, and apparently Walt did not like cats, and finally was like, this is your cat right here. You have trouble coming up with a design for your cat? There you go. It's living in your house. Eileen Woods, who is our voice of Cinderella, actually auditioned without actually auditioning. She had just made some recordings, and her friend sent them to Disney without telling her.
Whoa.
It wasn't until they offered her the part she knew she had been up for it. So yeah, I mean again, you can kind of tell some of the influence of the time period. Walt apparently told the animators for Lady Tremaine, the stepmother, to portray her as Joan Crawford, gone mad. If you've ever seen Mommy Dearest.
Not wrong.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is actually, at the same time they were working with Cinderella, they were actually also working on Alice in Wonderland. And because this was going to be their first feature release post-war. And essentially they were like, well, we'll just have them work on both, and whichever one gets done first will be the one that gets released first. And Cinderella won. And Alice in Wonderland came out the next year. There were some new animation techniques and also a little bit of animation workaround to make it easier. Like the pumpkin coach, if you watch it, the wheels, quote unquote wheels, don't actually move. It more just kind of floats because they didn't want to have to animate that.
Don't blame them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a coach made out of a pumpkin, so
Right.
You can't really fault it for not being like mechanically correct, because it's not mechanical anyway. So
Right?
yeah, I mean it did well. It's become a one of those Disney films that it has its detractors. I mean, obviously some people take issue with the fact that the prince doesn't really have a lot of screen time or character development or name either. It happens. There's also something to be said about the idea of the princess story of if you're a girl and your life sucks, just wait until a man comes along and saves you and makes things all better. Which, I mean, yes and no, I guess. I think some people will argue that Cinderella as a princess really doesn't do a whole lot except get made pretty. Gets a glow up, and then bada bing, bada boom, she gets herself a man. I would disagree, honestly. I mean, the whole reason that she ends up going in the first place is because she took the initiative to try and create an outfit for herself. And the only reason she wasn't able to finish that is because that her stepmother and stepsisters are a bunch of bitches and made sure that she didn't have the time. But thankfully, she has her friends, the mice and other animals that she's become friends with, because she has remained kind and gentle despite all the abuse that she has received throughout her life. When she goes to the ball, she's not even, while the stepsister and everybody's clamoring for the prince, that's not, she's just there to have fun. She just doesn't want to feel left out. She doesn't want to be forgotten. This seemingly happened. They stick her in the kitchen and make her do all the chores and treat her like a second-class citizen. For once, she just wants to be, kind of like Ariel later. She just wants to be where the people are, okay? She wants to see him dancing and do some dancing. And, it's through her own... I mean, when, she meets the prince and they have their meet cute moment and they do their dancing, and then the clock starts chiming, she's like, oh, I haven't met the prince, because she doesn't even know who the prince is. Apparently she would know if he stepped on her toes. So it's not till she finds out after that that's who that she was dancing with, and even then, it's, her forward thinking that, she kept, while the magic disappeared, it allowed her to keep the other shoe. She made sure to keep that shoe safe. Ends up working out in her favor, and as we see, as they're taking off after their wedding at the end of the movie, she just has a habit of losing shoes while going downstairs. So, she's kind of... I mean, we see that early on, actually, when she's going up and down the stairs with, like, all the trays and stuff, and she loses her shoes. She has to balance everything, turn around to find it, so... And the girl just needs her shoes, or her feet measured, so she gets proper... Or maybe she needs some insoles or something. I don't know. You would think magic shoes would be guaranteed to fit and not fall off, but hey, what do I know? I stopped wearing heels ages ago because it hurts too much. So yeah, there's comedy in this, obviously, both with the stepsisters and their shenanigans. And if you ever meet the stepsisters at the Disney park, the best ones are the ones that know how to play up the comedic side of things, because they can be quite funny. Of course, Cinderella is always, we see Cinderella in the park. She's always ball gown Cinderella. Some debate on what color that's supposed to be.
Well, yeah, I read about that.
Yeah. With at least with Sleeping Beauty, it's very obvious. It's just an argument of pink or blue. Cinderella, not so much.
Yeah.
Whether it's supposed to be white, whether it's supposed to be silver, or whether it's supposed to be blue. So, I personally think it looks nicest in kind of an icy blue.
Yes.
Personally, I think it looks nicest with that particular coloration. But again, that's me. I have met, let's see, I think I've met the prince once in a character meet and greet. He was nice enough. His makeup made him look kind of like Florida is the castle at the Magic Kingdom is Cinderella's castle. Out in California, it is Sleeping Beauty's castle. So Cindy has got the bigger castle in Florida. The carousel, which, if you happen to be standing in front of the castle and looking through the opening, so looking across the walkway that's in the center of the castle, which takes you directly into Fantasyland, you see the carousel is right there. That's done on purpose, so that you have the spinning of the carousel and the lights and the music and the stuff. So it kind of draws your attention there. But that is Prince Charming's carousel. And there is one horse on the carousel that is supposed to be Cinderella's horse. You can find it by finding the horse that's got a bow on its butt. That's supposed to be Cinderella's horse. Supposedly it was also Mrs. Disney's favorite. Supposedly. Yeah. Because that carousel is actually an old German carousel, I believe, from like turn of the century. So it's like old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then they, cleaned it up and stuff. And of course now, it plays the music from Cinderella in the carousel, very specific sounding music form. So if you've ever listened, and if you've not, you should, go listen to Lou Mangello's audio tour guides. And he's got a series for the Magic Kingdom, and each audio takes you through each land. And he goes into detail of the land as it was when he recorded those audios. So keep that in mind. Some stuff has changed since then, but he's got an entire section in there in the Fantasyland section all about the carousel. Of course, you can also go on YouTube and look for stuff as well, learn about the history of the carousel. It's actually quite cool. But yeah, its placement, its particular placement is not just for because the Disney people are like, oh yeah, this fits here. This works well for the flow of traffic. No, it is very much done on purpose. Of course, if you take the tunnel through the castle from Main Street through to Fantasyland, on the inside is this beautiful mosaic tile mural that kind of tells the story of Cinderella, and it's done in this beautiful tile mosaic work. That's very, very pretty. It Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique used to be, that's where you would go for your Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique appointments. Was there in the castle. I believe it has moved since then. That is where your younger royalty, your little prince and princesses, can get their own majestic makeover in the style of their favorite prince or princess. It is mostly girls, but they do have a version for the boys too, where they can make them look their most handsomest if they wish. But that is also where that's where you find the entrance to get up into the restaurant, which is inside the castle, which is, of course, Cinderella themed. And that is a really hard reservation to get. Really, really hard reservation to get, especially if you're wanting dinner time near the fireworks and or parade. That is a very popular spot for dinner and proposals. I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
I could not imagine why that would be the case. So yeah, I've never had a meal up there. I don't really care to. It's like, no offense, but it's not really my thing. No, more power to you though. If you can get that dining reservation, then let them know that you're going to pop the question. Because Disney will definitely do what they can to make it as magical as possible. But yes, you can imagine how romantic, eating dinner, the fireworks are going off, you're up in the castle looking over the people and the fireworks and the music and the blah, and next thing you know, your beloved is on one knee, asking you to marry them. It's like, I guess. Not the proposal I had, because that's not the proposal I wanted. But hey, if that's your thing, more power to you. And then, of course, there's the Dream Suite, which is even further up into the castle, which is the Cinderella Dream Suite, which, when it first was a thing, was during the Year of a Million Dreams, which is when I took Chauncey for his first trip. And that was like the big prize. People that would, you could be chosen at random to be offered a chance to stay in that suite. So essentially you get to stay in the castle overnight after it's closed. Everybody's left. Honestly, I think that would be a little weird. But hey, I guess you could say you've done it. Now, occasionally, it still is a prize to be given away in certain sweepstakes. Supposedly, if you can write a check with enough zeros on it, Disney will let you pay to stay in the suite. Supposedly. It's supposed to not be, for quote-unquote sale, like any other hotel room, but supposedly there have been some people that have wrote checks big enough that Disney's like, yeah, sure, we'll make sure you get extra toilet paper. You'll have the I mean, the suite, it's really beautiful. I mean, it's opulence to the nth degree. It's opulence turned up to 11. To quote Spinal Tap, it's got it's beautiful, luxurious bedroom, with the super, luxurious like bedding and wood carving, and there's one of Cinderella's glass slippers is on display, so you can ooh and on. Of course, giant good jacuzzi tub and everything, and it's just it's over the top. If someone wanted to offer me a night in it, I'd be like, yeah, sure, just to say I did. But it would not be my first choice. But I am not a pretty princess either. So, but I can see the appeal on a logical level. And of course, this being Disney, there's not just the 1950 movie. There are 2 direct-to-video sequels. Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True, came out in 2002. And Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, which came out in 2007. And of course, there was the live-action remake in 2015, directed by Kenneth Branagh, which, of the live-action remakes, from what I understand, this is one of the better ones. I've actually not seen it, but from what I understand, if Disney would make their live-action remakes like this, they would probably do a little bit, from what I understand. The 1950 animated version film in 2018 was selected by the United States Film Registry by the Library of Congress for preservation for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Ooh.
And of course, Cinderella also pops up in other places, as we alluded to once upon a time. She is in Into the Woods. Andrew Lloyd Webber released Bad Cinderella, which apparently was bad idea because it closed after 85 performances, and this is the guy that brought us Cats. So that marked the end of a 44-year stretch where one or more Lloyd Webber shows have been playing on Broadway.
Oh.
There is, there's a version with Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater back in the day. Obviously, there are bits and pieces of the idea of a Cinderella type story that have been used in various IPs, and or versions that are like, Cinderella, but not quite. I don't necessarily remember it being that good, but I don't necessarily remember it being that bad. But if you want a twist on it, watch the 1960 Jerry Lewis film Cinderella. If you want a little twist on things. Of course, Ever After, which is kind of a historical fiction telling of the Cinderella story, which has been reviewed on Gold Standard. I was not available for that particular episode, but it has been done. I don't remember if that was a main feed or Patreon. Of course, the Ella Enchanted with Anne Hathaway, which has a number of fairy tale influences in it. Of course, you have A Cinderella Story with Hilary Duff and Chad Michael Murray from 2004, which there's a whole string of Cinderella Story Disney thing movies that all have slightly different plots. And oh my goodness, I mean, there's just so many. It's like I can't even keep track of them all. So I will, I'll do what I can to put links in the show notes. Like I said, a lot. There's books. There's parodies. There are very different versions, interpretations out there. One of my favorites, I definitely will have linked to the show notes because thankfully they have put it up on the official YouTube channel. But the Carol Burnett show did a version called Cinderella Gets It On, where Cinderella becomes a disco queen or a star, a disco princess, I guess. With, of course, Carol Burnett playing Cinderella, and her Vicki Lawrence playing her mother, Harvey Korman as the fairy godmother, and her stepsisters are played by the Pointer Sisters, the singing group. So, it's a Carol Burnett show, so it's hilarious. You can't beat it. So yeah, I would definitely link that in the show notes because it is available on the official Carol Burnett show YouTube channel. Good old Cinderella. She's been around longer than you might have thunk. It's still culturally significant. As much as some people may bemoan, like Frozen when it came out and suddenly everything was Elsa this and Elsa that. And, the other princesses that we've had throughout time, from the beginning of Disney to, the period post-Walt and then the Renaissance with Ariel and Belle. No, I will not say Pocahontas is a princess. She is not. That's not how that works. And of course, our more modern, with Elsa and Anna, although technically Elsa is a queen, not a princess. Anna was a princess, although now she is Queen of Arendelle, so they're both queens. Of course, we have Merida from Brave. Even Vanellope von Schweet is technically a princess. So according to the other princesses, she is a princess. So in Wreck-It Ralph too. So yeah, you can. There's the idea of the Disney princess, the idea of a Cinderella story, someone overcoming obstacles and having their wildest dreams come true, or even things they couldn't have dreamed of coming to fruition, is not going anywhere anytime soon. Everybody loves an underdog story. Mm-hmm. Whether it's sports, whether it's whatever. People just love seeing people, that aren't the elite seemingly come out of nowhere and be like, hey, look at me! I'm awesome! And we're all over here like, yes, you are! I don't know where you came from, but look at you! Doing the thing. You're awesome. I haven't checked the March Madness bracket. I don't think we've got any Cinderella stories occurring, I don't think. There have been any major bracket busters, I don't think. I know as last week, I know that us Hoosiers, not myself included, but in general, people were excited because Purdue made it out of the first round. But I don't think that means a whole lot. Because, I don't see any, super low ranked coming through to... Nope. At this point, the teams left in the Sweet 16. The lowest ranked team was Arkansas. They were 10th. They were ranked 10th. So pretty much everything are 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, just a couple 6s. Yep. No Cinderella stories this year in the March Madness, but that's okay. There's also other opportunities. Basketball is not it. Somewhere somebody's gone like, Hoosier just said basketball's not everything. You can't take my Hoosier card away from me just because I said basketball is not everything. All right. Well, any thoughts? I think I've known you guys a while. I don't think I would consider any of y'all pretty princesses either.
Mm-mm.
But I can respect it.
Yep. Yeah, same. I'm for comfort.
Yeah.
I don't want, if I don't have to dress up, I don't.
Yeah, really. Folks like to say, they like to quote Walt and say, yes, it was all started by Mouse. And yes, technically it was all started by Mouse, but it is carried on because of princesses.
Mm-hmm.
Not wrong.
I am sorry, but we would not. If that wasn't the case, the two major theme parks in just this country would not have comparatively Sleeping Beauty's castle. If you are familiar with the size of Cinderella Castle, when you go to Disneyland, you might be a little disappointed at the size comparison. But either way, you've got two major theme parks where the thing you see when you walk in is a castle dedicated to a princess. They're not going anywhere. You're still going to see little girls, and maybe little boys too. Hey, I'm not judging. Mm-hmm. Dressed up as a Cinderella or a stepsister. Maybe even the fairy godmother. Occasionally you will see a little kid dressed as the fairy godmother. It's not very often, but occasionally you do, and I think it's very cute. Good for you, going against the obvious. I'm excited to get back to the Disney parks and see where we're at as far as our princess representation is at the moment. Well, if any of our listeners want to give their 2 cents about Cinderella, whether it is the Disney version, and I say Disney version like there's only one, multiple, I mean, technically, Brandy's Cinderella, yes, is Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella, but Disney brought her in as part of their universe of the crap. What's that called? What's the series called with the kids of it's mostly the villains. Descendants. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
They brought Brandy in and made her Cinderella, and the rest of the cast, other than Whitney Houston, because she's no longer with us, unfortunately. But they brought back her Prince Charming and like her, the parents, like Whoopi and Victor Garber and stuff. So they have made that Rogers and Hammerstein Cinderella essentially canon in the Disney Descendants universe. So it all comes back to the House of Mouse. So when I say Disney Cinderella, I could be talking about the cartoon, I could be talking about Brandy, I could be talking about Once Upon a Time, I could be talking about the live action version. What was that, Lily James?
I think so.
Yeah. So, the film adaptation of Into the Woods, take your pick. Or any of the others. The 5 bazillion versions of Cinderella or a heroine by another name, but kind of the same story. Maybe you got a favorite. Maybe there's a version out there that maybe we should read or watch or something that you like, hey, this is a really interesting interpretation of the story. You can send us feedback. Our email address is fivishfangirls@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, which is thefivishfangirls.com, where you can connect with all of our various podcast related social media accounts, so you can always send us messages that way. There's also our individual social media accounts as well. There's also the link to the book club. Like I said, the month does not end until next Monday, so technically you still have another week. So we remind you, although when we remind you next week, by the time you hear it, it'll be too late. But, that's just the way that the calendar falls sometimes. So just know, when you hear this, by the time we record our next episode, you're essentially, you're cutting it very close as far as voting. But then we'll have a whole new poll for you, so a whole new discussion for you at the very least. So there's that. Of course, if you want to financially support us, you can various different ways. We have a regular supporter on Patreon. If you are so inclined, our Patreon supporters, hopefully you've been enjoying the raw and uncut footage I've been sharing with you. It's been sitting on my hard drive as I try to get through everything that's on my said hard drive. So every now and then I like to throw our YouTube channel will get the edited version, but our Patrons at the moment are getting the raw, unedited footage straight off of the recording device of various things. So there's that. Yeah, everything's on the website. When all else fails, fivishfangirls.com. Yeah, that's been fun. Look at us getting back on the horse after I needed that vacation. Oh my goodness, I needed that vacation so much. So appreciate everybody's patience. I ran away for a little bit, but we are back, baby. And lots of exciting stuff coming. I don't know if it was intentional, Holly, but you made an allusion to next week's topic.
I sure did.
You sure did.
It was intended.
And if all y'all are going, what? Well, you're just going to have to wait and see.
Yep.
But until then, we are going to sign off for this week before my dinner gets cold.
This is Ian Fango saying goodnight.
This is Holly from Wisconsin saying good evening.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Bibbidi bobbidi. Bye-bye. Thank you, our Fiveish fam, for joining us on this week's geeky journey. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Stay connected with us on our website, thefivishfangirls.com, and follow us on most social media with @FivishFangirls. Plus, check out our nonprofit, Fangirls Give Back, to see how we're making a positive impact in our community. Until next time, stay nerdy and let the squee continue.